Shana Tova. Are these positioned okay? Okay. Thank you once again for the opportunity to return to what feels like home. After I turned 40, I wrote a sermon called I'm Getting Older. 31 years later, I asked myself, what was I thinking? Boomers are obsessed with aging. We have two standards to determine when old age begins. Number one, older than Bob Dylan, old. Bob is now 82. But those of you with gray heads don't rejoice too much, because another boomer icon, Paul McCartney, also set a bar for his famous song, which asks in a lament that's crushingly poignant, will you still need me? Will you still feed me?
When I'm 64.
When I'm 64. Retirement is challenging. I celebrate that I'm no longer a slave to a packed calendar. Up through June 30th, 2019, my calendar overflowed. Nothing could happen at Beth Israel without me. Or so I thought. On July 1st, 2019, I woke up to an empty calendar. I didn't feel badly for me, I felt badly for you. How would you go on without me? I found out pretty quickly. Quite well, thank you very much. As challenging as it is to get up every morning and go to work, it's a different but entirely daunting challenge not to have to go to work every day. Notice what Paul's song says. Will you still need me? Will I have purpose? Will you still feed me? Will there be someone to take care of me when I need it? Meaning and caring community. Those are things that our elders worry about. Many really are abandoned by loved ones and friends, by society, when they're most vulnerable. And too many others all around us feel that society has abandoned them. The willingness to throw people away is as old as the Bible. But in our day, it has become, you should pardon the expression, a pandemic. This sermon is about how today we are too willing to throw so many people away. America's political rhetoric is disgustingly strident. The left casts aside those who express what are considered unacceptable views through its program of cancellation and political correctness. The right rejects the trend of the last 60 years or so towards a more open and tolerant America with its war against LGBTQ plus folks, abortion, critical race theory, people of color, immigrants, and its willful distortion of the term woke. In my file for a sermon like this, I have articles from the last couple of years, can't help collecting them, with titles like, America is Getting Meaner. Am I morally bound to confront friends who support President Trump or to stop speaking to them? Is there a way to dial down political hatred? Senator Ben Sasse published a book titled Them, Why We Hate Each Other and How to Heal. Nate Cohen has written that today we not only clash over policy and ideology, but we see the other side as alien and immoral. Democrats and Republicans don't just disagree, they dislike each other. According to polls, a majority of Americans say that other Americans are the greatest threat to America. The writer Anne Lamott once wrote words that go to the heart of the matter. You can safely assume that you have created God in your image when it turns out that God hates everybody that you do. Jews know what it feels like to be thrown away. We're the original disposable people. Got a problem with the economy? Throw out the Jews. Got a problem with social unity? Throw the Jews away. We started out as war refugees, a throwaway people, and are commanded over 50 times in our Torah not to ever do that to other people. A strange Talmudic passage tells a story about the rabbis throwing away one of their colleagues. The first part of the story describes a debate in the Rabbinic Academy and how Rabbi Eliezer was the lone dissenter from the majority of the rabbis. Confident that he was right, he elicits miracles to prove his point. The rabbis are unmoved. At Rabbi Eliezer's command, God's voice even appears in the story to affirm that Rabbi Eliezer is correct. The rabbis, unimpressed, don't budge. And as a footnote to this part of the story, we're told that God delighted in the way the rabbis ignored God's intervention. God even laughed. What happens next is shocking. The majority of the rabbis express their anger to Rabbi Eliezer by reversing every decision he ever made. They cancel him. And it fell to Rabbi Akiba to share the horrifying news with his teacher. When Rabbi Eliezer hears the news, he's devastated. He begins to weep, rends his garment, and sits on the ground like a mourner. And then the Talmud tells us how God reacts. God is furious. Here's the punishment that God meted out. A third of the olive crop was destroyed. A third of the wheat, a third of the barley was destroyed. Death and destruction. Today we might say God went all biblical on them. Rabbi Daniel Gordis commented on this passage. The point of the story is to be found in the comparison between God's two reactions. Kick God out of the discussion, the Talmud says, and God laughs. Treat a human being the way you treated Rabbi Eliezer, and God's wrath will know almost no limit. Legal views or political views or moral views are one thing, the story seems to suggest. And on those reasonable minds can differ. But when it comes to trashing another human being, God will not abide it. Our tradition is unyielding on this point. The Talmud tells another story of the most rejected rabbi in the Talmud, Elisha ben Aboye. He was rejected because he rejected Judaism. The rejection was so complete that the rabbis actually nicknamed him Acher, which means the other. He was the hated other, completely ostracized. But one rabbi, the great Rabbi Meir, would go and study with him because Acher had been his teacher. This enraged the other rabbis, and they confronted him. How can you be with him? Don't you realize he's an apostate? Don't you realize he doesn't believe in God? Don't you realize he's dropped out of our people? Rabbi Meir simply responded, "He is my teacher. To me, he is a pomegranate. I take the fruit, and I don't eat the peeling." Maybe the most significant revolution in human thinking is found in the opening passage of our Torah, which was just read here. When God creates humanity in God's own image. Our rabbi said that soaring moment in cosmic history occurred on Rosh Hashanah, which does not celebrate the creation of the world, but the creation of humanity. Other people had the idea of created in God's image, but it was the Jewish Bible that applied that idea to every human being on earth, not just the elites of the society. And we Jews take that seriously. We also take seriously the concomitant idea that follows. Every human being must be treated with dignity and respect. That's not negotiable. No one should be thrown away. No one should be abandoned. No one should be canceled. Love your neighbor as yourself. So at this holy season, I urge you, don't be so quick to hate. Don't be so quick to cancel or even to judge. Instead, create relationships and communities in which differences are the goal because they're a good thing. Leave some space for ambiguity and complexity in your political opinions. Be humble. Doubt yourself a little bit. Respect those who disagree with you. Be curious. Be curious about why that person believes something so contrary to what you believe. Acknowledge that some who agree with you have faults, and some who disagree with you have virtues. Be more interested in learning from people you disagree with than in winning an argument with them. As Rabbi Jonathan Sachs wrote, learn how to live graciously with those with whom you disagree. For those we hate, for those we disagree with, for those we just don't like, for all those whom others have thrown away, may we find some way to see the good in them, to take the fruit, and to put away the peeling. A footnote to the Paul McCartney song, to reassure my fellow boomers. Paul is now 81 years old, and of course, wiser. And he has said, if I were to write that song now, I'd probably call it When I'm 94.